I have been making video games my whole life. I've had the good fortune to be around since the beginning. I went into high school in 1974. Originally on a teletype and eventually on the Apple II, I began to really teach myself how to code on these machines. This was actually my first complete role-playing game that was written on a teletype. And then a few years later, when the Apple II computer came out, I wrote a game that I subtitled A Calibeth. This is actually the very first role-playing game that showed three-dimensional graphics. Sold about 30,000 units. I earned $150,000 in royalties. And I began to create not just A Calibeth, but the Ultima series right in the turn of the 80s. I've been collecting my whole life. Something I learned from my mother, actually. In fact, a lot of the things you'll see in here, I forgot to mention, are my mother's. There's a large amount of magic props. There's architectural antiques. You'll see children's games. You'll see an entire archive of 35mm films that go back into the early film industry. You'll see a wide diversity of things, crammed here into this barn. For my own work, I've kept every note, every piece of paper, every design binder. When I first started doing this, I wasn't thinking of any of it from a historical standpoint at all, of course. I mean, we didn't know there was going to be a games industry. I noticed that when people wrote in, they were saying, hey, I've enjoyed your games, but by the way, just so you'll know, the way I actually have fun playing is I steal from every one of your shops, I kill every one of the NPCs in the game, and then by the time I do all that, I'm really powerful, so I go kill the bad guy. And I was like, wow, that is not at all how I assumed people were playing these creations. It made me go, I want to create a story that's, first of all, deeper than go kill the bad guy. If there is a bad guy, I don't want them just to wait for you at the end to become powerful enough to kill them. I want them to be active in the world. And while I want you to have the freedom to play however you want, I want the world to react appropriately. If you're a dishonest, thieving scumbag, I want the people who you need to help you succeed decide they don't want to help you. Almost to a person, they thought this was a terrible idea. This game's gonna be a flop. No one's gonna like this. But I felt very passionate about this. This was Ultima 4, Quest of the Avatar. It's where the word avatar even comes from, that is now ubiquitous. And when we launched that game, it became the first #1 bestseller in the series. And in the mid-1990s, this little thing started happening called the internet and the beginnings of the World Wide Web. We kept looking at it and saying it'd be great to do the next Ultima or the next in a multiplayer environment. And the fact that there had never been a successful online game at this scale previously was weighing heavy on everyone else's mind. They're going like, you guys are nuts. We basically said, we're not taking no for an answer. 50,000 people immediately signed up. And so this sort of bastard stepchild product that no one really wanted suddenly became the most important thing happening in the company worldwide. It was the first one to really bring in tens of thousands and then hundreds of thousands and then ultimately millions of players together to play in a virtual world. And that really kind of blew the doors open for the franchise and for online gaming at large. It's been fascinating to be part of this industry from its infancy to where it is today, where today it is economically bigger than all other media combined. That being said, it is still tragically in its infancy. We still haven't refined some of these real fundamental questions about how does this art form work, and therefore what is its purpose, and how can we tell deep and meaningful stories. The video gaming industry is changing very rapidly. Moore's law is creating more and more powerful machines constantly. But the vast majority of games are doing nothing but chasing the bells and whistles that that additional power brings you. Those games, while they will sell great, I do not believe will be remembered because they are very quickly surpassed by the next generation of bells and whistles. If you want a game to survive the test of time, the game to be remembered over a longer span, you have to draw inspiration from far outside the field of the games themselves, whether that's history, whether that's science, cultural inspiration, philosophical inspiration. And only by studying the reality in which we live deeply do I think you can make something that's original, compelling, and lasting. It's just in my DNA. That's been in my DNA since before computers existed, and I'll probably do it the rest of my life.